Commander, the cubs haven't eaten in 72 hours. We have 8 hours before neurological cascade failure becomes irreversible. Kelthos stared at the biometric readouts, each one screaming red across his command console. 3 juvenile Kix thrall, apex predators whose adult forms had driven 4 sentient species to extinction before galactic intervention, were dying under his watch. Not from disease, not from injury, from starvation, while surrounded by enough fresh kill to feed them for a month. "Show me the feeding log again," he said, his secondary arms gripping the console edge hard enough to leave impressions. Dr. Vexia pulled up the data, her face ashen. 72 hours ago, we presented fresh Valcor calf, standard prey species, killed within the required 30-minute window. All 3 cubs investigated and rejected it. 48 hours ago, we tried Threxian herd beast, younger specimen, more tender neural tissue. Same result. 24 hours ago, we processed emergency authorization for Kylene rodent clusters. Their neurotransmitter profile is nearly identical to the cub's natural prey base. And they wouldn't touch it, sir. Not even the scent investigation phase. They're exhibiting stress behaviors now. Pacing, vocalization, aggression toward each other. Their neural chemistry is collapsing. In 8 hours, maybe less, the damage becomes permanent. Even if we get them to eat after that, they'll never develop proper hunting cognition. Kelthos felt his throat sacs constrict. 20 years running this conservation station, 20 years protecting the galaxy's most dangerous predators from extinction. He'd never lost a juvenile to feeding refusal. The Kix thrall were critically endangered. Only 47 breeding adults remained in the wild. These 3 cubs represented months of rehabilitation work after poachers killed their parents. "Contact the Galactic Conservation Board," he said. "Emergency classification. And get me Dr. Zilax from the Institute. If anyone knows Kix thrall neurobiology." "Commander," the station's AI interrupted. "The human specialist has arrived. Emma Johnson from Earth Transfer Program." Kelthos's primary eyes flicked to Vexia. "The human?" She wasn't supposed to arrive for another 2 cycles. "Transport schedule changed, sir. She's requesting immediate access to the juvenile predator ward." "Not now," Kelthos snapped. "We're in the middle of a crisis. Have her wait in—" "Sir, she says she's a wildlife rehabilitator. 6 years experience with Earth predators. She wants to assess the cubs." Vexia made a dismissive gesture. "Human predators are barely worth the classification. Their apex species are what, 200 kilograms maximum? These are Kix thrall juveniles. Even at 3 months old, they're more dangerous than anything on Earth." Kelthos was about to agree when another alarm shrieked across his console. Cub 2's neural readings had dropped another 15%. "Let her in," he said. "Maybe she'll see something we've missed." The human who entered the command center was smaller than Kelthos expected. Barely 1.7 meters, slight build, brown hair pulled back in what his cultural database identified as a ponytail. She wore a simple jumpsuit with Earth Conservation Authority patches and carried a worn bag over one shoulder. Emma Johnson looked at the displays, at the 3 cubs visible through the observation window. Sleek, scaled predators the size of Earth lions, with retractable claws designed to grip sentient prey and neural puncture fangs. Then back at Kelthos. "So they're not eating?" she asked. "Correct," Vexia said stiffly. "We've attempted 4 different prey species, all within their documented dietary range, all rejected. Their physiology requires fresh neural tissue for proper development. Without it—" "Yeah, I read the brief on the shuttle." Emma set her bag down and moved closer to the observation window. The cubs noticed her immediately, their predatory focus locking onto the new presence. "How fresh are we talking?" 30-minute maximum from kill to presentation, Vexia said. "Standard protocol for obligate neural-dependent carnivores. The neurotransmitter profiles begin degrading after—" "Right, okay. And you've tried different species?" 4 separate taxonomic families, Kelthos confirmed. All documented prey-based species, all rejected. Emma watched the cubs for a moment. They were pacing now, their movements showing the agitation Vexia had described. 1. Cub 3, the smallest, kept making a high-pitched vocalization that Kael'thas's translator couldn't quite process. "Huh," Emma said. "Did anyone check the supply closet for regular food?" The command center went silent. Vexia stared at the human. "Regular food?" "Yeah, you know. Backup supplies, preserved meat, anything that doesn't require—" Emma gestured vaguely. "Fresh kills every 30 minutes?" Kael'thas felt his throat sacs go completely flat. "Ms. Johnson, these are Kix thrall cubs, apex predators. Their digestive systems are specifically evolved to process fresh neural tissue. Their entire neurological development depends on consuming active neurotransmitters from prey species. They cannot digest preserved food." "Cannot or won't?" Emma asked. "Cannot," Vexia said, her voice sharp. "It's biological impossibility. Their stomach chemistry requires live enzymes from fresh kills to function. Preserved food lacks the neural signatures they need. Feeding them anything else would be—" She struggled for words. "It would be like feeding your species rocks. Their bodies literally cannot process it." "Okay, but they're not eating the fresh kills either," Emma pointed out. "So we've got 3 dying cubs and a method that's not working. What's the harm in trying something different?" "The harm," Kael'thas said carefully, "is that we would be wasting critical time on an approach that violates every principle of Kix thrall biology. Time those cubs don't have." Emma looked back at the observation window. Cub 2 had stopped pacing and was lying down, its breathing labored. The biometric display showed its neural readings dropping in real time. "How long did you say we have?" she asked quietly. 8 hours, Vexia said. "Possibly less for Cub 2. Its neural degradation is advancing faster than the others." Emma turned back to them, her expression unreadable. "And in those 8 hours, what's your plan? Keep trying fresh kills and hoping they suddenly change their minds?" Kael'thas didn't answer, because that was exactly the plan. Contact the Institute. Consult with Dr. Zilax. Try different prey species, different presentation methods, different environmental conditions, all while 3 cubs slowly died because their biology demanded something they were refusing to accept. "Where's your supply storage?" Emma asked. "Ms. Johnson, look, I get it. I've read your protocols. I know what the science says. But I've also worked with rejected feeders before, and sometimes—" She shrugged. "Sometimes the textbook is wrong. Where's the storage?" Vexia's translator made a sound that indicated profound skepticism. "Level 3, Section C, but I must insist." Emma was already heading for the door, her worn bag bouncing against her hip. "Ms. Johnson," Kael'thas called after her, "you cannot simply— we have protocols." She paused at the doorway and looked back at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something Kael'thas couldn't quite identify. Determination? Certainty? Something that made his instinctive assessment of her shift from harmless mammalian to something else entirely. "Commander," she said, "with respect, your protocols are watching those cubs die. Give me 20 minutes. Then she was gone, leaving Kael'thas and Vexia staring at each other across the command center, while the biometric alarms continued their relentless countdown. "Commander, I need you to understand what you're asking me to authorize," Dr. Vexia said, pulling up a holographic display of Kix thrall digestive anatomy. "This isn't a matter of preference. Look at this." Kael'thas watched as she highlighted the cub's neural processing organs, specialized chambers in their digestive tract that existed in no other known species. These structures evolved specifically to extract and process active neurotransmitters from fresh prey neural tissue. The enzyme cascades require, not prefer, require, specific molecular signatures that only exist in living or recently deceased organisms. Preserved food, by definition, lacks these signatures. The preservation process destroys the very compounds their bodies need to survive. "Then why aren't they eating the fresh kills?" Kael'thas asked, watching Cub 2's readings drop another 3%. "I don't know." Vexia's voice cracked with frustration. That's what makes this crisis unprecedented. Their biology demands what we're providing, but their behavior is rejecting it. It's as if an alert flashed across the console. Another feeding attempt, this one with freshly killed Morton crawler, a species whose neural chemistry was so close to the cub's natural prey base that it was used as a substitute in captive breeding programs across the galaxy. They watched through the observation cameras as the automated feeding system presented the kill. The cubs approached, investigated with a proper predatory interest, then turned away. All three, within minutes. 5 species now, Kael'thas said quietly. 5 documented prey species, all rejected. I'm contacting the Galactic Conservation Board, Vexia said, her hands already moving across her console. This needs emergency classification. We need authorization to try experimental approaches, hormone treatments, neural stimulants, forced feeding if necessary. Sir, the station AI interrupted. Ms. Johnson is returning to the juvenile ward. She's carrying... I'm having difficulty identifying the objects. Kael'thas pulled up the corridor camera feed. Emma was indeed heading back, her arms full of small metallic containers, cylindrical, with primitive printed labels. What is she? He zoomed in on one of the labels. The translation protocol struggled with the archaic Earth text before producing premium chunk chicken in water. No, Vexia whispered. She can't be serious. They both bolted for the door. By the time they reached the juvenile ward entrance, Emma was already inside the outer containment area, sorting through her collection of metal containers. She'd laid out 6 of them on the sterile floor, reading labels. Ms. Johnson, step away from the containment field. Kael'thas's voice came out sharper than he intended. Emma looked up, surprised. Oh hey, I was just organizing these by protein type. Figured I'd start with something mild, chicken or turkey maybe, before trying the fish varieties. Fish can be pretty strong smelling and might be overwhelming for... You cannot feed those cubs preserved meat, Vexia said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. What you're holding is biologically inert. Their digestive systems cannot process it. You'll kill them faster than starvation will. Dr. Vexia is correct, Kael'thas added, forcing his voice calmer. I appreciate your initiative, but this approach violates fundamental xenobiology. The preservation process destroys the neural compounds these cubs require, even if they were willing to eat it, which their instincts would never allow. It would provide 0 nutritional value, possibly cause active harm. Emma stood up, one of the metal containers in her hand. Okay, but here's the thing. You've tried everything their biology says they should eat, right? And they're still not eating. So either their biology is broken, or our understanding of their biology is incomplete. Our understanding, Vexia said icily, is based on 300 years of Kix thrall research, thousands of documented observations, comprehensive biochemical analysis. These are facts, not theories. Sure, but back home we used to think giant pandas could only eat bamboo. Turned out they could digest other foods just fine. They just preferred bamboo. And we've successfully raised rejected feeders on commercial meat products for decades. Big cats, wolves, even... These are not Earth predators. Vexia's composure finally cracked. Your planet's apex predators are evolutionary jokes compared to Kix thrall. The largest Earth carnivore mass is what, 300 kilograms? These cubs will reach 2,000. Their prey base included sentient species with complex neural structures. The biochemical sophistication required to process that is apparently not working right now, Emma said gently. She held up the metal container. Look, I get it. I'm the new human who doesn't understand galactic xenobiology. But I do understand desperate animals, and I understand that sometimes you have to try something crazy when the textbook fails. Kael'thas's communicator chimed. The Galactic Conservation Board. He answered, knowing what was coming. Commander Kael'thas, the board representative's voice was grave. We've reviewed your situation report. 3 juvenile Kix thrall in critical feeding crisis. We're placing your station on formal watch status. You are authorized to attempt any scientifically sound intervention to preserve these specimens. However, The voice hardened. You are explicitly forbidden from attempting any approach that contradicts established biological protocols. The integrity of our conservation science depends on evidence-based methodology. Is that understood? Understood, Kelthos said, his eyes on Emma. Updates every 2 hours. Board out. The communication ended. In the silence that followed, they could hear one of the cubs, Cub 3, making that strange vocalization again. It sounded almost plaintive, almost like, "Is that crying?" Emma asked softly. Stress vocalization, Vexia corrected. Neural distress manifesting as... Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was already working at the metal container, her fingers finding some kind of primitive opening mechanism on top. A pull tab, Kael'thas's database informed him. Ancient Earth food preservation technology. "Miss Johnson, I am ordering you to stop," he said. She pulled the tab. The metal lid peeled back with a soft crack. The smell hit immediately. Processed, preserved. Completely dead meat. No neural signatures, no fresh kill scent markers, nothing that should register to an obligate carnivore as food. Vexia made a sound of disgust. The smell alone will repulse them. Kick's thrall sensory organs can detect neural activity at the molecular level. That, she gestured at the open container, will register as carrion, possibly as toxic. Their instincts won't even let them investigate it. Through the inner containment field, the cubs' heads had all turned toward the smell. Not away from it, toward it. That's impossible, Vexia whispered. Emma was already moving to the containment field controls. I need to bring this inside. Which button? You cannot enter that enclosure with uncontained food, Kelthos said automatically. The cubs are in a stress state. They could attack. Even juveniles are lethal. Then help me use the feeding mechanism, Emma said, her voice patient but firm. Whatever gets this food to those cubs safely, because right now they're interested. Look at them. She was right. All 3 cubs were at the inner barrier now, their attention fixed on Emma and her impossible, biologically inert, completely wrong food source. Their biometric readings still screamed red across Kael'thas's console. Their instincts, according to 300 years of research, should be screaming at them to flee from the scent of processed meat. Instead, Cub 1 was pawing at the barrier. "Commander," Vexia said quietly, "this violates every protocol. The board just explicitly forbade..." "The board said no approaches that contradict established protocols," Kael'thas heard himself say. "They didn't say anything about human wildlife rehabilitation techniques that haven't been evaluated yet." It was the thinnest possible interpretation of his orders. It was also the only chance those cubs had. "Show Miss Johnson how to use the feeding system," he said. Vexia stared at him. "Sir, if this fails, if those cubs consume that substance and it causes harm, the board will shut down this entire station. Your career is worth less than 3 lives, Kael'thas said. "Show her." Emma spooned a portion of the canned chicken into the feeding dish, her movements calm and practiced. The automated system carried it through the sterilization field, which had absolutely no effect on food that was already thoroughly dead, and into the enclosure. Cub 1 approached immediately. "Impossible," Vexia breathed, her eyes locked on the biometric display. "Its hunting assessment organs should be rejecting the scent signature. There's no neural activity to track, no fresh kill markers. It should register as..." Cub 1's tongue touched the processed meat. Every alarm in the command center went silent. Not because someone shut them off, because the readings they were tracking suddenly stopped being critical. Cub 1 ate. Not tentatively, not with the hesitation of a desperate animal trying anything. It ate with the focused intensity of a predator that had found exactly what it needed. Neural chemistry stabilizing, Kael'thas read off his console, his voice hollow. Stress hormones decreasing, digestive enzyme production normalizing. This is... Pull up the molecular analysis, Vexia snapped. "Now, I need to see what's happening in its neural processing organs." The holographic display materialized between them. They watched in real time as Cub 1's specialized digestive structures, the ones that required active neurotransmitters that couldn't possibly process preserved food, began breaking down the canned chicken with perfect efficiency. "It's extracting nutrients," Vexia said faintly. "The enzyme cascades are functioning normally, but the food is biologically inert. There are no active neural compounds. The molecular signatures are all wrong. This violates—" Her translator made a sound like reality breaking. "Emergency call to the Galactic Biology Institute," she managed. "Priority override. Now." While Vexia frantically worked her console, Emma was already preparing another dish. "The other two need to eat too," she said calmly. "They've been watching their siblings, so they should be more willing now. Pack hierarchy stuff." Kael'thas watched Cubs 2 and 3 press against the barrier, making insistent vocalizations. The sound his translator had struggled with before now rendered clearly, hungry. They'd been saying they were hungry the entire time. The second dish went in. Cub 2 practically lunged for it. "Biometric stabilizing on Cub 2, Kael'thas reported mechanically. "Neural chemistry responding identically to Cub 1, stress markers dropping to normal ranges. This is, The third dish. Cub 3, the smallest, the one closest to critical failure, ate with desperate speed. All 3 cubs. All 3 impossible readings. All 3 sets of biological processes that shouldn't work, working perfectly. "Institute connection established," Vexia said, her voice shaking. "Dr. Zillax, I need emergency consultation on Kix Thrall juvenile feeding crisis. We have a situation that contradicts all established—" "Vexia." Dr. Zillax's image materialized in the holographic display. An elderly Threxian with the bearing of someone who'd spent 60 years studying xenobiology. "What's wrong? Your biological readings are showing— Wait, are those Kix Thrall cubs actively feeding?" "Yes." "Then why are you calling me? If the feeding crisis is resolved—" "They're eating preserved food, Doctor." Silence. "That's not possible," Dr. Zillax said finally. "I know. Their digestive biochemistry requires—" "I know. The neural processing organs cannot function without—" "I know." Vexia's composure shattered completely. "I know what's supposed to happen. I know what 300 years of research says. I'm watching it happen anyway." Dr. Zillax leaned closer to his display, studying the data Vexia was streaming. His expression cycled through disbelief, confusion, and something approaching existential horror. "This is confirmed accurate, not a sensor malfunction. Triple-checked. The cubs are processing preserved meat with normal efficiency. Their neural chemistry is stabilizing. In 15 minutes, they've recovered more ground than 72 hours of fresh kills even achieved." "Who authorized this protocol?" "The human did it," Kael'thas said, still watching his console, where 3 sets of vital signs were normalizing in real time. "Our new wildlife rehabilitator from Earth. She just did it." Through the observation window, Emma was sitting cross-legged on the floor outside the enclosure, watching the cubs eat with the satisfied expression of someone whose day was going exactly as expected. "The human," Dr. Zillax repeated slowly. "From Earth. The planet with the—" He pulled up something on his own console. "The embarrassingly small apex predators and the primitive conservation methods?" "That would be the one," Vexia said bitterly. "Let me speak with her." Emma looked up when they called her over to the communication console, still holding her empty can. "Oh, hey, are you another doctor? Because these cubs are doing great now. I'd give them another hour to digest, then offer a second feeding. Smaller portions, though. Don't want to overwhelm their systems after a fast." Dr. Zillax stared at her. "Ms. Johnson, what you've accomplished in the last 20 minutes contradicts every established principle of Kix Thrall biology. I need to understand your methodology." Emma shrugged. "I just fed them?" "It's pretty standard for rejected feeders. We see it all the time with zoo animals. They go off fresh food for various reasons, so we transition them to commercial diets. Canned meat, kibble, processed proteins. As long as the nutritional content is right, most carnivores adapt pretty well. Most carnivores? Vexia's voice was strangled. You do this regularly? Oh, sure. I mean, you can't just give any predator a can of tuna and call it good. You need species-appropriate nutrition, proper supplements, feeding schedules. But yeah, Earth's been feeding captive predators processed food for like a century? Maybe more? That's impossible, Dr. Zillax said automatically. I mean, I literally just did it, so... Emma gestured at the cubs, who were now lying contentedly in their enclosure, grooming themselves. Kael'thas pulled up Earth's conservation database, something he should have done when Emma first arrived. The data that loaded made his throat sacs constrict all over again. Vexia, look at this. She turned from the communication console. Her face went completely pale. The database showed hundreds of Earth facilities, thousands of captive apex predators. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, crocodiles, species that hunted, that killed, that ate fresh meat in the wild. All of them eating processed food, daily, for their entire captive lives. This is their standard, Vexia whispered. They just feed predators preserved meat, as a matter of course. Apparently, Kael'thas said, scanning through nutrition protocols, feeding schedules, dietary supplements, everything meticulously documented, everything working. They've been doing it for over 100 Earth years, captive breeding programs, rehabilitation centers, conservation facilities, all using processed food as primary nutrition. But the biological requirements, the enzyme cascades, the neural processing, they don't seem to have those problems with Earth predators, Kael'thas said, still reading. Or if they do, they've found ways to work around them. His communicator chimed again. The Galactic Conservation Board, exactly on schedule for the 2-hour update. Commander Kael'thas, status report on the juvenile feeding crisis. Resolved, Kael'thas said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. All 3 cubs are feeding normally, neural chemistry stabilized, crisis averted. A pause. Resolved how? What intervention was successful? Kael'thas looked at Emma, who was now making notes on a datapad about feeding schedules and portion sizes. At the cubs, who were exhibiting healthy post-feeding behavior for the first time in 72 hours. At Vexia, who was still staring at the Earth database like it had personally betrayed her. The human fed them from a tin can, he said. Another pause, longer this time. Commander, this is not an appropriate time for humor. We need actual... That's the actual report, Kael'thas interrupted. Ms. Emma Johnson, wildlife rehabilitator from Earth, fed the cubs preserved meat from sealed metal containers. Standard Earth protocol for captive predator nutrition. The cubs accepted the food immediately and are now exhibiting normal juvenile behavior. The silence stretched so long that Kael'thas thought the connection had dropped. That's impossible, the board representative finally said. Apparently not, sir. Preserved food lacks the neural compounds Kixthrall require. Apparently they don't require them as absolutely as we thought, sir. This violates 300 years of established xenobiological research. Yes, sir. More silence. We're convening an emergency session, the representative said slowly. Full biological workup required, complete documentation of methods. And Commander, don't let that human leave the station. The connection cut. Through the observation window, the cubs had started playing. Actual play behavior, pouncing on each other and rolling around their enclosure. The kind of behavior healthy juveniles exhibited. The kind of behavior Kael'thas hadn't seen from them since they'd arrived at the station. Dr. Vexia, he said quietly, how long did you say you've been studying xenobiology? 40 years, she said, her eyes still on the Earth database. 40 years, 3 advanced degrees. Published in every major journal, and I just watched a human with a can opener solve a problem I couldn't. Emma looked up from her datapad. Oh, don't feel bad. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised this hasn't come up before. Like, you guys have captive predators at conservation stations, right? What do you normally feed them? Fresh kills, Vexia said automatically. Appropriate prey species, dispatched according to species-specific requirements, presented within optimal freshness windows. Every day, every feeding period. Emma's expression shifted to something like sympathy. Oh man, that must be logistically insane. Do you know how much freezer space we'd need if we had to keep fresh prey animals for every carnivore at a major zoo? Kael'thas thought about the station's prey maintenance facility. 3 levels, dedicated staff, constant transport requirements, enormous resource allocation. It's standard protocol, he said weakly. Right, but like... Emma looked genuinely confused. Has anyone ever tried just not doing it that way? In 300 years of galactic conservation science, apparently not. Emma pulled up Earth's captive predator nutrition database on the command center's main display, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she was dismantling 3 centuries of xenobiological orthodoxy with every casual swipe. Okay, so the key thing to understand is that natural conditions doesn't actually mean what most people think it means, she said, highlighting a section labeled Dietary Transition Protocols. In the wild, sure, predators eat fresh kills, but in captivity, we learned a long time ago that fresh kills aren't actually optimal for a bunch of reasons. What reasons? Dr. Zilax asked through the communication link, his voice carrying the careful tone of someone whose entire worldview was actively collapsing. Well, for one, it's dangerous. Live prey can injure captive predators. We've had big cats lose eyes from prey defense, bears get gored, you name it. Pre-killed prey eliminates that risk. Second, it's logistically absurd. You need massive facilities to breed and house prey animals, specialized staff, transport infrastructure. Third, and this is the big one, nutritional consistency. She pulled up another document, this one showing detailed nutritional breakdowns. Wild prey has huge variation in nutritional content depending on season, health, age, all kinds of factors. Captive predators need consistent nutrition for optimal health. Processed food lets us control that precisely. We can supplement vitamins, minerals, specific amino acids. We can adjust protein ratios for different life stages. Can't do that with a live rabbit. Kael'thas studied the data. Protein percentages, fat content, micronutrient profiles, everything calibrated to species-specific requirements. How long has Earth been doing this? Vexia asked quietly. Depends on the species. Commercial zoo diets? Maybe 150 years. But humans have been keeping captive predators way longer than that. Ancient civilizations kept big cats, wolves, bears. They figured out pretty early that you could feed them meat scraps, bones, whatever was available. The science just made it more precise. And the predators accept this. Dr. Zilax leaned forward. There's no rejection response, no biological incompatibility. I mean, you have to transition them properly, Emma said, pulling up another protocol. See, this is for introducing new foods to reluctant feeders. You start with something palatable, usually ground meat or meat slurries for really difficult cases. Mix in small amounts of their old food if they're coming from a fresh kill diet. Gradually adjust ratios. Add palatability enhancers if needed. Bone broth, blood meal, organ meat purees. Takes a few weeks usually. Palatability enhancers, Vexia repeated, as if the words were in a foreign language. Yeah, stuff that makes the food smell and taste more appealing. Real basic animal husbandry. Emma glanced at the cubs, who were now sleeping in a contentedly tangled pile. Though honestly, these guys didn't need any transition. They went straight for the canned chicken like they'd been eating it their whole lives. Which is weird, but I'm not complaining. Kael'thas pulled up the Galactic Conservation Database for comparison. Our juvenile mortality rate for captive apex predators is 40% in the first year. What's Earth's? Emma checked her datapad. For established facilities following proper protocols, less than 5%. Most losses are from congenital issues or injuries, not nutrition. The command center went very quiet. 5%, Vexia said finally. We lose 40% of our juveniles, and Earth loses 5. Well, I mean, we've had a lot of practice, Emma said, with the kind of casual humility that somehow made it worse. Earth's captive breeding programs have saved dozens of species from extinction. Siberian tigers, California condors, black-footed ferrets, Arabian oryx. All of them were down to double-digit populations in the wild. Captive breeding brought them back. She pulled up images of Earth's success stories. Species that had been on the brink, now thriving in managed populations. And you feed all of them processed food? Dr. Zilax asked. Pretty much. I mean, we do enrichment feeding with whole prey items sometimes. It's good for behavioral health, but the base diet is commercially prepared. Way more reliable than trying to maintain fresh kill protocols for hundreds of facilities. Kael'thas did the math in his head. The station's prey maintenance facility cost millions of credits annually to operate. The space requirements alone consumed 3 entire levels. The staff of specialized handlers, the transport logistics, the waste management. How much did that can of food cost? He asked Emma. She picked up one of the empty containers and checked the label. This brand? Maybe 8 credits in Earth currency? You can get cheaper stuff, but I prefer the premium brands for carnivores. Better protein quality. 8 credits, Kael'thas said slowly. You resolved a crisis that threatened to shut down this station, saved 3 critically endangered juveniles, and potentially revolutionized galactic conservation protocols, with 8 credits worth of canned chicken. Well, I used 3 cans, so technically 24 credits, Emma said. Then she grinned. But yeah, that's kind of the point. Good animal care doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. It just has to be, actually based on what works. Dr. Zilax had gone very still in his display. Ms. Johnson, I need you to understand what you're suggesting. The Galactic Conservation Framework is built on the principle of maintaining species in conditions as close to natural as possible. Fresh prey, natural hunting behaviors, minimal intervention. These aren't arbitrary choices. They're based on the fundamental belief that predators require these conditions to thrive. Right, but they're not thriving, Emma pointed out gently. 40% mortality rate isn't thriving. That's failing. And I get the philosophy. We had the same debates on Earth 50 years ago. Natural is better. Captivity is cruel. We should minimize human interference. But then we actually looked at the data and realized that naturalistic doesn't always mean optimal. She gestured at the cubs. These guys need nutrition, safety, enrichment, and social structure. Whether that nutrition comes from a fresh-killed prey animal or a can doesn't actually matter to their biology. It matters to our sentient assumptions about what predators need. But the Kixthral neural processing organs, Vexia started, work fine with processed food, apparently, Emma interrupted, which suggests that either the organs are more flexible than you thought, or the neural compound requirement isn't as absolute as the research claimed. I'm not a xenobiologist, so I can't tell you which, but I can tell you that the cubs are healthy, their stress markers are normal, and they're exhibiting appropriate juvenile behaviors for the first time since you got them. Kael'thas's communicator chimed. The Galactic Conservation Board again. Commander, we've reviewed the preliminary data from your station. The board is convening an emergency session to discuss the implications. In the meantime, we're authorizing a full research protocol. We need comprehensive documentation of Earth's captive predator methodologies. All protocols, all nutritional data, all facility specifications. And we need Ms. Johnson to remain on site as a consultant. Understood, Kael'thas said. Commander, if this methodology proves transferable to other species. The board representative's voice held something Kael'thas had never heard before. Hope. We have 47 conservation stations across the galaxy. Hundreds of apex predator species in captive management. If Earth's protocols can reduce our mortality rates, improve health outcomes, reduce resource requirements, it could change everything, Kael'thas finished quietly. Exactly. Bored out. In the observation window, Cub 3 woke up and stretched, then padded over to the water dispenser. Normal behavior, healthy behavior, behavior that had seemed impossible 8 hours ago. "Ms. Johnson," Vexia said slowly, "how many other Earth protocols do we not know about?" Emma laughed. "Oh, man. Probably a lot. I mean, I'm just a rehabilitator. There's way more advanced stuff happening in veterinary medicine, behavioral psychology, habitat enrichment. We've got decades of research on everything from predator socialization to stress reduction to—" She paused. "Wait, do you guys do enrichment activities?" "Enrichment?" Kyle Thoss asked. "Yeah, like toys, puzzle feeders, training sessions, mental stimulation. It's critical for captive predator welfare." The look on Vexia's face suggested that no, they did not do enrichment activities. "Okay," Emma said, pulling up another section of the Earth database. "So we have a lot to talk about." 3 days later, Kyle Thoss stood in the command center watching Dr. Vexia redesign nutritional protocols that had stood unchanged for 3,000 years. "If we apply the Earth transition methodology to Verlian predators, we could reduce prey facility requirements by 70%, she muttered, scrolling through data with the manic energy of someone whose entire career had just been simultaneously invalidated and revolutionized. The Scythian carnivores might need supplemental iron, but the base processed protein matrix should work. And the juveniles, oh, the juveniles. If we can get mortality rates down to even 15%. "The Conservation Board approved funding this morning," Kyle Thoss interrupted. "Full research priority status. They want Earth protocols evaluated for all 47 station species. Emma's database is being distributed to every conservation facility in the galaxy." Vexia looked up, her eyes still slightly wild. "Do you understand what this means? For centuries, we've been making it harder than it needed to be. More expensive, more dangerous, more death. Because we assumed natural meant optimal." "I know. The humans solved it with canned chicken, Kyle Thoss. Canned chicken." Through the observation window, Emma was sitting in the cub's enclosure, something that would have been suicidal 3 days ago, while all 3 Kix-Thrall juveniles climbed over her like she was playground equipment. They'd bonded to her completely, responding to her voice, following her commands, playing gently despite their size. She was holding something small and red in her hand, moving it in erratic patterns across the floor. All 3 cubs were utterly transfixed, stalking it with intense predatory focus. "What is that?" Kyle Thoss asked. Vexia checked the feed. According to the database, it's called a laser pointer. Simple light projection device. Earth uses them for predator enrichment and training. They watched as Emma dragged the red dot up the wall. The cubs leaped after it in perfect synchronization, their coordination and reflexes on full display. "That's a training exercise?" Kyle Thoss asked. "Apparently it provides mental stimulation, encourages natural hunting behaviors, and builds positive associations with human handlers. Earth's been doing it for over a century." Vexia's voice held a note of hysteria. "We didn't even know enrichment was a concept, and they've been doing it for a century." Emma's laughter echoed through the communication system as Cub 2 crashed into Cub 1 in their enthusiasm. "Yeah, cats are basically universal," she said to no one in particular. "Doesn't matter if they're from Earth or halfway across the galaxy. Show them a little red dot and they lose their minds." She stood up, dusting off her jumpsuit, and the cubs immediately clustered around her, making soft chirping sounds that the translator rendered as contentment. "All right, guys, dinner time. Let's practice eating from bowls again." Kyle Thoss watched as Emma produced 3 metal bowls from a storage container, another Earth innovation, apparently, and filled them with carefully portioned servings of processed food. The cubs settled down immediately, eating calmly from their designated bowls instead of competing over a single carcass. "She's teaching them table manners," Vexia said faintly. "She's teaching apex predators, creatures whose ancestors hunted sentient species, to eat politely from bowls. And it's working. And it's working." Kyle Thoss pulled up the station's supply requisition system and began entering orders. Cases of canned meat, nutritional supplements, something called puzzle feeders. An item labeled catnip that Emma had mentioned might be interesting to try, though she wasn't sure if the effect would translate across species. His communicator chimed. The Conservation Board, requesting his presence at an emergency summit on Earth animal husbandry methodologies. They wanted to discuss facility redesigns, staff retraining, protocol overhauls. Every conservation station in the galaxy was about to change because a human fed 3 cubs from a tin can. In the observation window, Emma had finished the feeding session and was now introducing the cubs to what appeared to be a simple cardboard box. She'd placed it in the center of the enclosure and stepped back. All 3 cubs approached cautiously, sniffing the box, pawing at it. Then Cub 3 climbed inside, and its siblings immediately tried to join it. Within seconds, 3 juvenile apex predators, each capable of killing most sentient species, were wrestling over a cardboard box with all the ferocity of Earth kittens. That's enrichment too? Kael'thas asked. According to the notes, cardboard boxes provide tactile stimulation, spatial awareness training, and play opportunities. Cost, essentially free. Effectiveness, extremely high. Vexia shook her head slowly. We've been spending millions on specialized habitat equipment, and humans are getting better results with garbage. Emma had flopped down on the floor, watching her cubs play with obvious satisfaction. She pulled out her datapad and started making notes, probably feeding schedules, behavioral observations, enrichment ideas. Just another day at work for her. Just the complete overthrow of galactic conservation science for everyone else. Commander, Vexia said quietly, when the human first arrived and suggested feeding them preserved food, I thought she was ignorant, reckless. I thought she was going to kill those cubs. I know. I thought the same. She saved them. She saved our entire conservation framework. And she did it with techniques so simple, so obvious, that we should have discovered them centuries ago. But we didn't, Kael'thas said, because we were so certain we were right that we never questioned whether there might be a better way. Through the window, Emma looked up at the observation camera and gave a casual wave. Then she went back to her notes, completely unbothered by the fact that she'd just revolutionized galactic science before lunch. Kael'thas's datapad chimed with a message from Emma. Hey, running low on canned food already. These guys eat a lot. Can you authorize a bigger order? Also, I had this idea about clicker training for the cubs. Might be useful for medical exams later. Oh, and totally random, but does the station have any catnip? Just curious if it works on non-Earth felines. He stared at the message, then at the cubs playing happily in their enriched, properly fed, mentally stimulated environment. 3,000 years of conservation protocols, overturned by canned chicken, laser pointers, and cardboard boxes. He typed his response. Order approved, whatever you need. And Ms. Johnson, thank you. Her reply came back immediately. No problem. This is literally my job, LOL. Same time tomorrow for enrichment training? Kael'thas looked at Vexia, who was already deep in Earth veterinary databases, muttering about something called operant conditioning and positive reinforcement training. I think, he said slowly, we're going to be learning from humans for a very long time. Through the window, Emma had pulled out a ball, another simple Earth toy, and was teaching the cubs to fetch. The cubs, obligate carnivores who required fresh neural tissue and natural hunting conditions, were playing fetch and loving it. Kael'thas sent his acceptance to the Conservation Board Summit, updated the station's status to Research Priority Level 1, and authorized the complete facility redesign that Emma's protocols would require. The galaxy's conservation science had just entered a new era, all because one human looked at a crisis and asked, "Did anyone check the supply closet?" End.